Discovery.
3, 2, 1, 0, 0. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Welcome to the Podcast Discovery Show, the podcast that's about other podcasts, where every single week we have a book club style discussion about a podcast. At the end of the episode, we're going to have a brand new recommendation, and we'll talk about that one next week. I'm Kirk.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Matt.
And this week we are talking about a show called How to Be a Better Human. And this is a collaboration between TED and PRX. And I'll read you their blurb first. It's not your average self-improvement podcast. Each week, join comedian Chris Duffy in conversation with guests and past speakers as they uncover sharp insights and give clear takeaways on how you can be a better human. And typically, this isn't really a style of show I like, but I do like some TED Talks, not even all of those really. But I liked the angle of this where it was kind of short little segments and then it was interesting topics. And so I actually recommended two different ones that I felt like worked really well as a pair. So the two we're going to be talking about is how practicing curiosity could help the world around you and the science of happiness, scheduling time to feel awe. So what'd you guys think of this one?
Good show. I thought it was great. I thought it was very well formed. Like the structure of it was really nice. I appreciated how they kind of started off with that anecdote about the glacier. Didn't appreciate how quickly it jumped off and was like, stay tuned. I was like, but I really enjoyed how
really
it flowed
set you
into
up
the
for
next
that
thing. Yeah, I was like, oh man.
Because the whole time you're secretly wondering, why are they blue? Why is this happening? But you have to listen to the end.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
I really enjoyed it. I liked both episodes. They were very different, and that's what I liked about it. Because even mentioned like he was actually being interviewed rather than being the interviewer on the episode about the Awe Walk, which was interesting. But so this is our final episode of season 5, and for the podcast, our podcast, and this has been a weird year.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we're kind of post-COVID in some ways,
we'll never be.
You know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean.
It has been a very weird year. The last 2 years have been very weird, and in particular, heck, we've missed a lot of episodes this year because of life things. A lot of really heavy, crazy things happening. And so these discussions, it's very poignant right now, very timely in a lot of ways. I mean, I'll be honest, this has been like the worst 2 years of my life in so many different ways. And it's been really difficult. And so to have little things like an awe walk or little things like finding joy in curiosity are maybe the little things that keep you grounded and sane during a very tumultuous, easy for me to say, time in literal history.
It's true. And let's go into the scheduling time to feel awe one, because I feel like that one really hits on some of the exact things you're talking about, where this started to become almost not hugely popular because I hadn't heard of it. I don't know if you guys had, but this started being a thing without knowing the name of it during COVID, because I believe they were talking about in the Science of Happiness episode is they would see a hummingbird every day. And basically they were on quarantine, and that's something that they started just watching. There was just this little tiny moment of wonder that happened outside. It was just a little bird that they saw every day, but they probably would not have noticed it if they weren't in like lockdown. And I remember the same thing with Matt. Honestly, I was over at Matt's house recording a Creators Cove episode, and he was just talking about this bird that he always heard outside of his window. And so we were recording, and literally on the recording, you can hear the bird out there crying because the bird kept jumping out of its nest, and Matt would go out there and find the bird and put it back in its nest. And so I do think that there was some element of when we were all trapped, trapped in our houses, couldn't do anything, it allowed us to maybe give more meaning to something that's normally mundane, or normally we were just going too fast to see it.
Yeah. I always think of those little door stopper things, that you flick and they go.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Everyone did that as a kid, right?
Yeah.
Where you just have to mess with that thing.
But
how many videos have I seen of like people like will like make a song out of it or something? It's so stupid, but great. But
like, that to me is like a really, a macrocosm or a microcosm of that macrocosm of appreciating the small stuff. Cause it's like, it's a door stopper, but it's also like a sign of insanity to see someone just flicking that.
I mean, you're not wrong. If you see somebody that's just like sitting in a corner flicking a door stopper, you're like, okay, it's probably not good. But really, they're just living their best life. They're really enjoying the small things in life.
But it's like, I think about how we were stuck inside, and it's like, some of us only had little door stoppers to play with. Like, that's all we had.
So we had, and we had a great time with them.
Yeah.
No, I feel like that's why I liked these two as a combination, is because I felt like both of these are about perspective. It's about how just changing how you perceive what's around you is the only difference between where you are and where you could be. So this one, the awe walk, and it was something that I immediately was drawn to. I would like to challenge both of you guys to go on an awe walk during our break. And we're going to talk about them when we get back. We're going to talk about if we can, because I think it's an intentional thing. I think it is purely like you choose to go out and look for small things that are interesting. But the reason they did this originally, and we'll have this linked in the show notes if you'd like to read more about it, was essentially University of California, San Francisco, and a couple other institutions decided to start teaching older walkers how to cultivate awe. And they were doing this basically to try and understand if it could help their mental well-being, because there's a cognitive decline as people aged. And so they want to see if having them engage their mind in a meaningful way improved their quality of life. So essentially walking is good for you and engaging your mind is good for you. If you combine those two things, is it better than the sum of its parts? And so they got pool of people from 60s, 70s, and 80s. They got 52 of them if they would just add a 15-minute walk to their normal schedules. And all of them were physically and cognitively healthy. And then they basically did the exact same thing with the control group. And what they did was they gave them no information on the control group. They're just like, just go take a walk. Tell us how you feel afterwards. But the other group, they told them to try to cultivate awe. And so here's a quote from one of the professors, Virginia Sturm. Basically, we told them to go on a walk somewhere new to the extent possible, since novelty helps to cultivate awe. And looking at everything fresh with childlike eyes is the goal. And so they basically just asked them to go on a walk. But during this, they also had a couple things, and it was 8 weeks. And what they would do is they told them, take a photo, a selfie of you at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end of your awe walk. And there was a lot of weird things they saw start to change, because
the way that they studied those selfies was very fascinating to me when they talked about it in the show.
Checked how many pixels of their face were in there, or checked how happy their smile was. They went really crazy on it. But across the group that was like trying to cultivate awe, they were essentially moving themselves more and more out of the picture. Because at first they were just like taking pictures themselves, but over time they were just like on the very side of it. It was mostly just capturing where they were. And basically in the end, this was just a really, really helpful thing. There's no downside to looking for things, but that's all it is when you're out, look around, really be mindful and look around, and you can improve your kind of mental well-being just by seeing what's around you. And I just thought it was such a crazy premise.
No, yeah, I thought it was really cool the way that they did the study, how granular they got with the data that they got back from the people. And just, it makes sense, it just does. If you go on a walk and you've got a purpose. I think that's the main difference. If your purpose, they gave him a purpose, which is to cultivate awe. And it just changes everything. I think that's kind of the lesson here in a lot of ways is with anything, try to find a positive purpose when you're doing it. It's much easier said than done, but
it is.
It's a really good lesson in that. Now, I wanted to ask you guys if you guys have any specific experiences where you can look back and be like, okay, I didn't go in with that intention maybe, but I had an awe walk. I'll start because, those kind of questions are a little,
Thank you.
But I do have one that I thought about that when I was listening to this episode just recently. It was in the summer, so it wasn't like cold at the time, but I went on a bike ride early in the morning at this place. It's a 7-mile loop that goes through the woods called Flatwoods. And I was riding and it was early for one, so there wasn't many people out there. And then out of nowhere, it started raining lightly for like an hour. And so then there was much less people there. So I was all by myself. And because it's raining, I didn't have my headphones in. My phone was in my thing. Usually I'm listening to music or something, but wasn't listening to anything, just the rain. And it was just, at one point I was soaking wet and there's like steam coming off the pavement and there's deer everywhere. Like I saw deer like everywhere. And then there was like a rainbow in the sky. And I was like, what? This is just so magical. It was like magnificent. Like, cause it was warm enough that the rain actually felt good. Like it didn't like make you all cold. And it was just like this one with nature in a way where like I was soaking wet. There's deer everywhere. There's a rainbow, just rained. And it was a magical moment. And that was only a few months ago. It was an amazing awe ride, I guess. And yeah, it was really cool.
I am thinking of one right off the top of my head. When I went to the Pacific Northwest with my brothers, we went to, I believe this would have been in Portland. We went to, there's like a stretch of road that there's just waterfalls and mountains all along the whole thing. And so we basically made this day of, we're just going to go along and stop at any of these we think would be interesting. And so the first thing we did first thing in the morning was a hike. And we're from Florida. We are at sea level. Elevation is not really a thing, but it is big time up there. So we woke up and we went and we got food. And my first mistake was I got a breakfast burrito from the grocery store. And then there was another mistake that other things happened that made this challenging for me. And so I was going up the mountain and I was struggling. So it was all switchbacks, which is just, it's back and forth straight up the mountain, really high elevation. It was a couple miles. It started raining while we were doing it. And it felt like you're in that scene in Star Wars, because all of the trees are so big up there. So you're kind of just taking all that in. And then we're going around, we're going up, and I'm starting to really struggle. I'm like, I'm in trouble here. I need to get this burrito out of my system. And then we finally get to a break in the trail. And we ended up not being able to go higher because it was so high up at the top that it was like snowy, but the snow had melted. And so it was very muddy and it was hard to climb and it was all of this stuff. So we got to like the top and it's a flat point on the top. It was near the top, but like kind of on the side of this mountain. Mm-hmm. And you look out and everything around was just fog covered like peaks of mountains. So just any direction you looked, there was just trees covering mountains with fog and everything like that. And it was just one of those moments. I think that the challenge of getting up it was part of it, but it was definitely one of those things where I kind of sat there for a minute. I was like, wow, this is really an incredible moment.
I think the only time one of the things that I sort of try to do is I try to do this pretty regularly and sort of get out of my head and into whatever. So I have a lot of like I'll just randomly be like, man, there's like so many things inside of our bodies. Sometimes I'll just be like, it's insane. It's absolutely unimaginable. But sort of an external experience was similar to you there, Kirk. We used to go on walks all the time in Burbank, California, and we lived in kind of the mountains there. So the walks were really pretty. They were very suburban neighborhood kind of things. But I can remember this one night, like just kind of turning the corner, and on this guy's lawn were like 15 deer. And it was like, oh, hey. And then we just kind of like stood there. They just sauntered off. And then it was really crazy. Something spooked them. And then they clomped down the pavement. And it was just like, you heard the hooves, their little hooves going. There's just like 15 hooves going. So it's, just a crazy sound, just a weird thing. And I can also remember that same area there was a little golf course, and then I just looked out, and there was like a family of coyotes just playing and having fun. It was in the Santa Monica Mountains. So it was like, there was so much wildlife that was just out of place up there.
I was going to say mixed with suburbs.
Very weird. Very weird. But like we're saying, it just took you right out of it. It was like, oh, okay. Huh. Just kind of startled you. The shock of the awe. I actually really enjoy awe and that kind of stuff. There's a great author, Edward Abbey, who I just absolutely love his book, Desert Solitaire. And he talks about this very thing and how it's easier to experience awe when you're experiencing something on its terms rather than your own. He talks about, because he was a park ranger in Utah for a while, and he had this whole section about how these people would go and they'd look at the arches, at the National Arches monuments, and they'd be like, wow, it looks like this, it looks like that, blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like, let's take a picture and then go away, But he had this whole treatise kind of thing on, we need to witness these things as what they are and not what we think of them, And I feel like awe is essentially, it's shaking our ability to see something on our terms. We're like, I can't figure it out. Like they said in the episode, I really appreciated that. That it's, what was the exact word that he used? It was not a unfathomable, but like a reality sort of shocking moment. Awe. And I really enjoyed that. So I always try to curate those for myself. And like you guys said, it's more often than not a fail, but but it's great when they finally come across your desk.
A shared moment that I can think of, Zach, is like when we would go, I think both times were really cool, where we'd go when we went to the beach, we took our little weekend trip at your grandma's timeshare. And just this last time was great because there was like thunders, like two or three separate thunderstorms, like miles away, like really far into the ocean. So the sun was going down. So we saw the sunset to our right, and then to our left was three thunderstorms. So it was just like this firework display and this magical cotton candy sky. It was just so cool. And we take we're a little spoiled with our sunsets here, but it was some really special one because and there's something about being at the beach at night, like when we go, it's always like during turtle breeding season or whatever, so all the hotels have the lights off, so it's really dark, so you can like see the moon, and the moon like reflects off the water, and it's just like really cool. We just sit there and
the year before was definitely one for me, where the bioluminescent jellyfish were everywhere.
Oh my God.
It was mind blowing. And that was, we were at it 100%. It's just the timeshare my grandmother owns. And it's, I don't know. It was one of those things where I guess I wasn't looking for that or expecting that. And so that's what really is going to make that moment, is you kind of just go. And we did exactly that. We went and sat on the beach and we're like, why is the ground glowing? And so then it kind of became this whole thing. But it really is something that those types of moments are so like resonant. They stick with you for a long time. And so I really connected with the kind of the message here where put yourself in that position and you can have more of that. You know, be intentional about it, and that can be more, it can happen more often, and it can happen in places without having to go far away. It's about a change in mindset and being mindful.
Well, and I really appreciated how they talked about being open to those experiences essentially makes them happen more, which is like, duh. But it's also like, yeah, that's, if you go on a walk and you get out of your house, you're more likely to be experiencing something that you weren't planning on experiencing, and you can get lost in it. So I really appreciated this episode. I really liked it.
And the other episode was about just how being curious and changing the perspective there and just finding things interesting can help the world around you. And this one's featuring the guest on this one and this is actually the How to Be a Better Human show. The first one was he was the interviewee on Science of Happiness, but this one is him interviewing Joe Hansen, who is a scientist turned YouTuber who has a YouTube channel called It's Okay to Be Smart. And there was a couple little moments in this one that I thought were really interesting because definitely, I think it was towards the end of the episode, but he said the only difference between like me and you is that those weird shower thoughts I have all the time, I write them down and I obsess over them and I find out what the science is that makes these things happen. And so that's the entire premise of his channel. And when you look at his channel, he's got a bunch of really interesting kinds of topics and everything like that. He's doing very, very well. He has over 4 million subscribers to the channel. And that is the kind of content that I'm glad a lot of people are seeing. Because Kirk and I have talked about this a lot, but like, it feels like we grew up with all these science forward things that were awesome to watch. You know, Crocodile Hunter and Jeff Corwin and the Discovery Channel was a different thing than it is now.
It was actually discovering things.
Yeah, it's not like a cat beauty contest reality show. Yeah. So it's just like I feel like there's space for that, but I do feel like YouTube can kind of fill that void in some ways. And so it's a cool thing.
This is a tiny tangent, but it's based off something they mentioned in the show, is they talked about, well, what about all the misinformation that's on YouTube? And I really liked how Joe Hansen's angle was, yeah, there's a lot of that, but if you get bogged down trying to basically explain why someone else is wrong, then you're not being able to explain why something's right. You know, you end up being, you know, it's like having an argument with a fool. From far away, you look the same. You know, it's not the.
No, I mean, if you ever were wondering why presidential debates feel stupid to you, this might have something to do with that.
Very true.
But yeah, I also like that he views curiosity, and I think that he quoted Albert Einstein, where he called it a holy curiosity. And Albert Einstein was notoriously non-religious. And so what did he mean by that? And I think I just felt like these were two kind of sides of the same coin, you know, because it's about, you want to practice curiosity. You want to feed that. You want to, if your brain is taking you down a rabbit trail, the premise is go with it, make a habit out of it, make a ritual out of it, make it something that you practice and do often. And it will start to become second nature. It will start to kind of reprogram how you think about everything.
I really liked, I think that he was like giving like I'm sure he was quoting somebody, but it was like a quote. I mean, it was like a definition for curiosity, which was like finding joy in discovery. And
I love
could be misquoting it, but it really was, I was like, oh dang, that's nice. That's cool. And it also feels like kind of where we started with the show, you know, like we just really like discovering stuff and learning things ourselves. So why not try to share that with other people and kind of go on that journey together?
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoy it. I consider myself a pretty curious person. I guess us three probably do.
Yes.
Yeah.
We at
Look,
least consider ourselves curious.
yeah. And that is curious, isn't it? No, but we're all kind of hunting for new information, and we enjoy the process a little bit. And it's always like, I never understand the concept of someone not being curious. I don't know about for you guys, but it's kind of like, how do people not want to know more?
Yeah, no, I agree
don't.
because it kind of
there's a lot of people that don't.
Yeah, they don't.
It's crazy
They
to
just
me.
a thought pops into their head like, why is it that way? And they're like, nah, who knows? Who cares?
That's
They're
not
like,
our target
I need to-
audience.
Yeah.
It is not. It is not. I don't think.
There's like two people listening that are like, excuse me, turn off podcast.
Yeah, they're like, God, these boring people that are curious.
No, it's one of those things where like even everyone that's not curious is like, oh yeah, I'm curious. And they're not, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
no one says
Yeah.
they're not curious. I'm a not curious person. It's not a thing.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of an interesting take on it too. Why does blanket curiosity feel so intriguing to be, while like actually being curious about something is like, oh, you're just obsessive or whatever, you know? Kind of weird.
I mean,
Weird to me.
I'll put out a call if there's anybody who just is deeply uncurious about the world. We have a Discovery hotline.
I hate new things.
And
I
we
don't
would-
like learning anything.
No, yeah, we want to understand the perspective. So please call the Discovery hotline. It's always in the show notes, and tell us why you hate information so much.
Speaking of that, that's a great way to kind of close out the year. If
Wrap
you've been
down
listening to us this
season
year,
4.
Boom.
at season 5.
Is it 5?
Yeah,
oh my
we're in
God.
season 5.
How long have we been doing
Wow.
this?
Feels like one
5
to me.
years. That's like, it feels like season 1 to me.
Yeah,
It's
like
great.
half a season maybe. Huh.
Feels like just like March or so.
Almost like it came to bail you guys out.
He was.
He definitely
I will say that.
was.
Special shout out
No,
just to
shut
Matt.
me out.
Special shout out to
1000%.
Matt.
Dude.
Oh yeah, no
Like-
man.
All right. Well, I'm going to special shout out to both Zach and Kirk here.
I love that the end of this is just us congratulating ourselves
Great
and saying
job,
like
guys.
we're all very curious. Congratulations to us.
Very, very curious. Very nice. Very good. Good podcast.
No, but what I was gonna say is we're gonna have one more episode that's kind of, well, it's probably gonna be our first episode of season 6, which will be kind of like a recap of this year, maybe even other episodes that we've talked about in the past, and that'll be kick it off, and we'll do the first recommendation from that. But in the interim, during this break, guys, give us a call on the hotline. Tell us what you enjoyed about season 5. Tell us what you would like to see in season 6 or listen to. It's a podcast. And just say hi. Drop us a line. It's always in the show notes, the number, and we would love to hear from you. And we'll play it on the first episode of season 6. 6 years. That's a long time.
6 years.
Wow.
That is wild. But yeah, it was
That's pretty amazing, you guys.
it was a wild season. It was great. There was a lot of personal stuff, but it was still fun. And that's the thing, is like, we're not just trying to pat ourselves on the back about being curious. I honestly do find it fun to, like, when we're getting ready for Discovery Weekly, I have to go find some things that'd be interesting to talk to you guys about, or we
Mhm.
go find a podcast that'd be fun to talk about. It's like, I don't know. I enjoy it. Still enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, sneak peek. I was just looking up what a Tesseract was. That's awesome.
Yeah,
You
it's
want-
actually a thing. And I
wanna
thought it
find
was
out?
just something from freaking movies, from the Marvel movies. Didn't know it was an actual thing, but it is.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
If you want to find out, there's another show on our feed that you've probably seen called Discovery Weekly.
I got something about a Russian fox experiment and also how cats became domesticated, which is actually really fascinating.
I have something about a garbage patch.
Garbage Patch Kids?
Classic. If you haven't listened to that show, Zach always has something on garbage.
It's always a garbage patch with me.
Oh, man. Well, guys, thank you so much for sticking with us this year. It's been special. But we did it. We made it through.
We made it.
I will say I am proud that we were able to put out as many episodes as we were able to put out. I think in total, including Discovery Weekly, we put out like 50 or 60 episodes this year.
Boom.
So
content.
Even though we missed a lot, we still created a lot of content.
No, and I mean, knock on wood, I'm looking forward to next year. I feel like we're going to be in a better place, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Knock on wood. We'll see. But optimism, right? Maybe it's something.
Yeah.
Matt, why don't you play us out this time?
Oh.
You can do it.
Oh, boy.
It's
I'm
2
excited.
words.
I'm excited.
You kick it.
All right. You guys ready for this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my brain. I'm like, these are the 2 words. And there. I'm going to say them and you guys are going to laugh and be like, that's not them.
You can do it. Come on.
You guys ready?
Uh-huh.
And remember,
there's always more to discover.
Boom.
You did it!
To new beginnings.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.